The night started like any other, but it didn't take long for everything to spiral into chaos. I leaned against the living room window, watching rain streak down the glass, my mind swirling with unease. Something was off with Lisa, my wife of 7 years. She'd been coming home late, blaming endless work meetings, and her once warm laughter had turned brittle, forced. I tried to shake the thoughts away, chalking it up to stress. But tonight, my instincts screamed louder. Lisa had rushed out the door hours earlier, dressed to the nines for what she claimed was a quick dinner with the girls. Yet, as the clock ticked past midnight, her absence gnawed at me. Out of habit, I glanced at her laptop sitting open on the kitchen counter. Her email notifications were still logged in. That's when I saw it, a message preview from some guy named Chad. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe." My heart sank, and my grip on the counter tightened. For a moment, I debated ignoring it, pretending I hadn't seen anything. But curiosity won out. I clicked the email, then the chain of messages that followed. Every word made my blood boil. "That dress last night was killer. Too bad we couldn't finish what we started in the car. I'll sneak away this weekend if you can. Jason's too oblivious to catch on, lol." Jason. That was me. Oblivious. The very word felt like a punch to the gut. I didn't remember grabbing my jacket or heading out into the rain. All I knew was that I was suddenly in my car, parked outside Zola's Bistro, where Chad had suggested they meet tonight. Lisa's silver sedan gleamed under a street lamp in the lot. I stayed in the shadows, my combat instincts from years of military training kicking in. My heart raced as I saw her walk out of the restaurant, arm in arm with a smug, square-jawed man who couldn't have looked more cliché if he tried. They kissed, long and passionately. I clenched my fists, fighting every urge to storm over and rip Chad apart. Instead, I took out my phone and snapped a picture. Evidence. This was no longer just personal, it was war. Before I could retreat, Lisa's laughter echoed across the lot. "Jason's clueless," she said loud enough for me to hear. "Poor guy probably thinks I'm at book club or something." That was the first crack. The part of me that wanted to salvage our marriage, to confront her rationally, died right there. But it got worse. I stayed low, creeping closer, and overheard Chad's reply. "Maybe it's time to wrap this up. Divorce him, and we can finally live like we want." Her response made me nauseous. "Nah, not yet. I'm milking him for everything. Once I clear out his savings, then we'll talk." The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was calculated, vicious. I slipped away unnoticed, but I wasn't retreating. I was regrouping. Back in my car, drenched and shaking with fury, I texted her, "Have fun at book club? I hope the girls enjoyed your company tonight." Her reply came within seconds. "Yes, sweetie. It was lovely. I'll be home soon. Love you." She had no idea that her lies were unraveling. I smiled bitterly, my mind racing. This wasn't going to be a simple confrontation. "Oh no, Lisa. You're playing games, and I just leveled the field." The moment I stepped back into the house, the silence seemed heavier, the walls themselves mocking me for my naivete. I tossed my soaked jacket over a chair and stared at the framed wedding photo on the mantel. Lisa was beaming in her white dress, her eyes full of love, or so I had believed. Now, I wasn't sure if any of it had been real. I needed more than just a few emails and a couple of pictures. Evidence was my shield, and I wasn't going into battle unarmed. I pulled out my phone and opened a tracker app one had installed months ago on Lisa's phone, not out of suspicion back then, but for safety. I never thought I'd be using it to catch her in the act. Her location popped up, still at Chad's apartment. Perfect. For hours, I sifted through her things. Her laptop, her purse, and her desk drawers turned into a minefield of lies. Credit card receipts for dinners at places I'd never heard of. A lingerie set I'd never seen her wear. A second phone hidden behind a stack of old books. The phone was locked, but I wasn't about to give up. A few tries later, I cracked the passcode, Chad 123. The predictability was almost insulting. What I found confirmed everything. Text after text filled with explicit messages, pictures, and plans that made me sick to my stomach. One message stood out. Can't wait for our getaway. Let's take Jason's SUV, more comfortable for the drive to the cabin. They were using my car. My car? My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I threw the phone on the counter, breathing heavily as the rage threatened to spill over. But then something else hit me. Why hadn't she mentioned any trip to me? Was she planning to leave without an excuse? I scrolled through the messages until I found what I was looking for. The trip was planned for this weekend. 2 days from now. She wasn't even going to pretend to hide it. When Lisa walked through the door later that night, I was waiting for her in the living room. She didn't look surprised to see me awake. If anything, she seemed annoyed. Jason, why are you up? It's late. I could ask you the same thing. My voice was calm, too calm. Lisa paused, her hand tightening around her purse strap. Book club ran late. You know how Julie gets when she starts rambling. Julie didn't exist. Not as a real person, anyway. I stood and walked toward her slowly. Did Julie enjoy the wine? Or was it more of a Chad kind of night? Her face froze for a split second, but then she forced a laugh. What are you talking about? Chad? Who's Chad? Her voice was sweet, innocent, but I could see the crack in her facade. I'm talking about your boyfriend, I said, pulling out my phone and holding up the photos I'd taken at Zola's bistro. Her eyes darted to the screen, and the color drained from her face. She didn't even try to deny it. Okay, fine, she snapped, dropping her purse on the floor. Yes, I was with him. But you've been so distant lately, Jason. You've been married to your job, to your stupid routines. I needed something real. Something real? The audacity of her words felt like a slap. Real? I echoed. You mean sneaking around behind my back, using me like some kind of ATM while you play house with that idiot? Oh, spare me the self-righteous act, she spat. You're not perfect, Jason. You're boring, predictable. You wouldn't even notice if I disappeared for a week. Her voice grew louder, her accusations sharper. But all I could think about was how cold and calculating she had become. This wasn't the woman I married. Was I boring when I saved your father's house from foreclosure? I asked, my voice rising to meet hers. Was I predictable when I took care of you during your surgery? Don't rewrite history, Lisa. You're just a selfish liar. For a moment, the room was silent, save for the sound of her shallow breathing. Then she laughed, a bitter, venomous sound. Maybe I am, she said, crossing her arms. But at least I'm honest about it now. And guess what? Chad's everything you're not, exciting, passionate, alive. He makes me feel like I matter. I stared at her, dumbfounded. You matter? You matter? You've got a funny way of showing it, Lisa. Did I matter when you were planning your weekend getaway in my car? Did I matter when you were draining our accounts for your little adventures? She flinched, but her expression quickly hardened. What do you want me to say, Jason? That I'm sorry? Fine. I'm sorry you're not enough for me anymore. The words hit me like a freight train. I didn't think she could hurt me more than she already had, but she managed. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the darkness, replaying every moment of our relationship, every memory now tainted by her betrayal. The anger burned hot and steady, but beneath it was something colder, sharper: determination. This wasn't over. I wasn't going to be the fool she left behind. Lisa and Chad thought they were clever, but they underestimated me. As I sat there, a plan began to form. By the time the first rays of dawn broke through the window, I was ready. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The pain, the betrayal, it was all still there, but it was no longer a distraction. Instead, it fueled me. I had one objective now: to expose Lisa and Chad for the conniving, selfish parasites they were, and to make sure they felt the consequences of their actions. I started by making a few calls. First, to my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Rachel who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Rachel didn't waste time sugarcoating anything. "Jason, the evidence you have is solid, but you need more if you want to ensure she doesn't take a penny more than she's entitled to. Gather everything: financial records, texts, emails. And whatever you do, don't confront her directly again until we've filed." Her advice was clear, but waiting wasn't my strong suit. Later that afternoon, I took a deep dive into our finances. The results were worse than I expected. Lisa had been siphoning money out of our joint account for months, funneling it into a hidden account under her name. Thousands were gone, probably spent on Chad and their little escapades. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but I needed to confirm one last detail: their weekend getaway. I checked the tracker app again. Lisa was back at Chad's apartment. I knew she'd be there most of the day, so I had time. Using the spare key to her car that she didn't know I still had, I drove to her work parking lot, found her vehicle, and planted a GPS tracker under the bumper. Before I left, I slipped a small recorder into the glove box. The idea was simple: if they talked openly in the car, I'd have even more proof of their affair, and their plans to screw me over. The opportunity to move came faster than I expected. That evening, Lisa strolled into the house as if nothing had happened. Her smugness was unbearable, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Hey, Jason," she said casually, dropping her purse on the table. "How was your day?" "Fine," I replied, not looking up from my laptop. "Yours?" "Busy," she said, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Work's been insane lately. You know how it is." I didn't respond, and she didn't press further. It was almost laughable how easily she slipped back into her web of lies, as if the confrontation the night before had never happened. Lisa wandered upstairs while I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to finish some work. But really, I was reviewing the messages on the recorder I'd retrieved from her car earlier. I hit play. Lisa's voice came through loud and clear. "We'll take Jason's SUV. He's too dumb to notice anything missing, and if he asks, I'll just say I lent it to a friend." Chad laughed. "You sure he's not catching on? You said he was acting weird last night." "He's harmless," Lisa replied dismissively. "He talks a big game, but he won't do anything. He's too soft for that." Soft. I clenched my fists, letting their words sink in. Lisa and Chad thought they were untouchable. That arrogance was going to be their downfall. Friday arrived, and Lisa was practically glowing as she packed a bag for her work retreat. She didn't even bother to come up with a convincing excuse. "Jason, I'll be back late Sunday," she said, kissing my cheek like nothing was wrong. "Don't wait up for me, okay?" I nodded, masking my rage with a smile. "Have fun." As soon as she drove off in my SUV, I grabbed my keys and followed her at a safe distance. The GPS tracker pinged her location every few seconds, leading me out of the city and toward the mountains. After about an hour, Lisa pulled into a remote gas station, where Chad was waiting in his car. They exchanged a quick kiss before heading up the winding road toward the cabin. I stayed back, keeping them in sight but far enough away that they wouldn't notice. Finally, they reached the cabin, a secluded spot surrounded by dense trees. Perfect for what I had planned. I parked down the road and moved on foot, blending into the shadows as the sun dipped below the horizon. My military training kicked in, every step silent, every movement calculated. From the edge of the property, I could see them through the cabin window, laughing and drinking as if they didn't have a care in the world. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Lisa. "Hope you're having fun at your work retreat. Miss you already." I watched as she glanced at her phone, her expression barely changing before she tossed it aside. Chad said something that made her laugh, and she leaned in to kiss him. Disgusting. I snapped a few photos from my vantage point. Evidence, plain and simple. But I wasn't done yet. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a message. It wasn't from Lisa, it was from Chad. "There's nowhere to run, cuckold. We'll finish you off soon, so accept your fate." The audacity made my blood boil. They thought this was a joke, a game they could win. But they didn't know who they were messing with. I replied immediately, "I'm not running anywhere, bastards." And guess who's in my crosshairs right now? From my position, I could see Chad's phone light up with the notification. He froze, his smile faltering as he read the message. I hung up and steadied my hand on the rifle scope, aiming just close enough to scare them. My finger hovered over the trigger. "Let the games begin," I whispered, pulling it. The rifle cracked like thunder, the sound splitting the quiet mountain air. My shot wasn't meant to kill, yet. The bullet buried itself in the thick wooden beam of the porch, just inches from where Chad had been leaning moments before. Inside the cabin, chaos erupted. Through the scope, I watched Chad dive to the ground, scrambling for cover, while Lisa froze in terror. Her mouth moved, shouting something I couldn't hear. My phone buzzed again. Chad was calling. I ignored it, savoring the tension. I wanted them to squirm. Instead, I sent another text, "Didn't think I'd find you, did you? Game over." Inside the cabin, I saw Chad yank Lisa down beside him. He was yelling now, his gestures frantic, as if this was some scene from an action movie. Maybe he thought he was the hero. He wasn't. I moved swiftly and silently through the forest, closing the gap between me and the cabin. I wanted them to feel hunted, to know that this wasn't a random scare, it was personal. My boots pressed into the soft earth, each step deliberate, calculated. Another buzz. This time, it was Lisa. Her message read, "Jason, please stop. Let's talk. You don't have to do this." I laughed bitterly under my breath. Talk? She wanted to talk. After what she'd done, after the lies and betrayal, after turning me into a joke with her pathetic excuse of a man, she thought we could just talk. I typed back, "Talk? Like you talked to Chad about stealing my money? Or using my car? Save it." Through the trees, I had a clear view of the cabin's back door. The light inside flickered as Chad fumbled with something, a phone, maybe a weapon. He was shouting at Lisa, his bravado already cracking under the pressure. Lisa was crying now, her mascara streaking down her face as she clutched her knees. Her voice, though muffled, reached me as she wailed, "This is all your fault, Chad." I smirked. The cracks were already forming. I took out my phone again and sent one more message, "You wanted a weekend to remember. I'll make sure you never forget it." Another shot rang out, this one aimed at the cabin's side window. Glass exploded inward, and their screams echoed through the woods. It was time to move in. I slung the rifle over my shoulder and approached the cabin, staying low and quiet. My heart was steady, my breathing calm. Years of training had prepared me for moments like this, only back then, I had been hunting enemies overseas, not the people I once trusted most. I reached the side of the cabin and pressed myself against the wall. Inside, Chad was barking orders like some third-rate action hero. Stay down. I'll handle this, he said, pacing in the tiny living room. Lisa was sobbing uncontrollably, rocking back and forth on the floor. Jason's lost his mind. He's going to kill us. I kicked the back door open with a single blow, the force sending it crashing against the wall. The sound reverberated like a bomb going off. Chad spun around, his face pale as a ghost. He was holding a knife, pathetic. Jason, man, let's talk about this, he stammered, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. I stepped inside, leveling the rifle at him. Put it down, I said coldly. Chad hesitated, glancing at Lisa, who was still curled up on the floor. I said put it down. The steel in my voice must have broken whatever fantasy Chad had been clinging to, because he dropped the knife with a clatter. Jason, please, Lisa sobbed, crawling toward me on her hands and knees. This isn't what it looks like. I was going to tell you everything. I looked down at her, my face expressionless. Save your breath, Lisa. I've seen enough. I heard enough. And I know exactly who you are. She froze, her tear-streaked face contorted with fear. It wasn't like that. Chad pressured me, he manipulated me. I barked out a laugh. Manipulated you? Was that before or after you started stealing from me? Or maybe when you decided I was too boring to keep around? Lisa's face twisted into anger. You don't understand. You've always been so distant, so wrapped up in your stupid routines. I was miserable. Miserable? I repeated, lowering the rifle slightly. And instead of talking to me like an adult, you decided to screw around with him? Chad opened his mouth to speak, but I silenced him with a glare. Don't. You don't get a say in this, Chad. You're lucky I don't break every bone in your body right now. He shrank back, his hands still raised. I reached into my pocket and tossed the recorder onto the floor. It clattered loudly, the sound cutting through the tension. Play it, I said. Lisa hesitated, her eyes darting to Chad, who looked just as clueless. Play it. With trembling hands, she picked up the recorder and hit play. Her own voice filled the room, clear and damning. We'll take Jason's SUV. He's too dumb to notice anything missing. Her face turned white as the recording continued, detailing every disgusting plan they'd made behind my back. When it ended, I leaned down, my face inches from hers. How miserable are you now, Lisa? I straightened, slinging the rifle back over my shoulder. I'm done with you, I said. You can have Chad, the cabin, the lies, all of it. But you're not getting a single cent from me. The lawyers will see to that. Lisa scrambled to her feet, her panic escalating. Wait. Jason, please. Don't do this. I ignored her, stepping toward the door. Oh, and Chad? I added, pausing to glance back at the trembling idiot. You ever come near me again, and you'll wish I only had a rifle. With that, I walked out into the night, leaving them to the ruin they'd built for themselves. The cool mountain air hit me as I stepped outside the cabin. My adrenaline was still spiking, but I kept my movement steady, purposeful. The confrontation had gone exactly as I'd planned, maybe even better. I didn't need to hurt them physically, watching them crumble under their own lies was far more satisfying. But I wasn't naive. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. People like Lisa and Chad didn't slink away quietly. They schemed. They retaliated. And I had to be ready. I made it back to my car parked down the dirt road and sat for a moment, gathering my thoughts. The image of Lisa on her knees, begging for another chance, replayed in my mind. A part of me, a small, wounded part, wanted to believe her. To believe that she had been manipulated or that her excuses held even a sliver of truth. But then I remembered her texts, her laughter with Chad, and the smug look on her face the night before. No, Lisa wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she'd been caught. I pulled out my phone and dialed Rachel, my lawyer. "Jason, everything okay?" she asked, her tone sharp. "It's done," I said, my voice steady. "I confronted them. Got everything on tape. I'm sending it over now." Rachel let out a low whistle. "That's bold. You sure they won't try to twist this back on you?" "They can try," I said. "But I'll be ready." I spent the drive back to the city alternating between calm determination and flashes of rage. Every mile was a reminder of the life I'd built, the one Lisa had trampled on. By the time I reached my house, the exhaustion hit me. My body felt heavy, my mind racing with scenarios of what might come next. I parked in the driveway, half expecting Lisa to be inside waiting for me, but the house was silent. Good. I needed the solitude to prepare for whatever she'd throw at me next. The next morning, my phone buzzed incessantly. Messages and missed calls flooded in, not just from Lisa, but from mutual friends and even her family. "Lisa, Jason, we need to talk. Please answer me." Lisa's mom, "Jason, I don't know what's going on, but Lisa is in a bad place. Can you please call her?" Mutual friend, "Dude, Lisa told us everything. This is insane. Are you okay?" I ignored them all, letting the silence speak for itself. If Lisa thought she could control the narrative, she was sorely mistaken. I had the evidence, the receipts, and now, I had the power. Around noon, a knock at the door startled me. I opened it cautiously to find Chad standing there, his face bruised and his hand wrapped in a makeshift bandage. "Jason," he began, his voice trembling. "Look, man, I just want to talk. I think we got off on the wrong foot." I stared at him, unimpressed. "You've got 5 seconds to get off my property before I call the cops." Wait, he said, holding up his hands. "Lisa's losing it, okay? She's blaming me for everything. I just want to clear the air." "Clear the air?" I repeated, stepping forward. "You think you can walk up to my house after screwing my wife and playing me for a fool, and I'll what? Shake your hand? Forgive you? It's not like that." Chad stammered. "Lisa told me." "Lisa told you?" I cut him off, my voice cold. "That's your problem, Chad. You believe her lies just like I did. Now get out before I show you what else I learned in the army." Chad's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Finally, he turned and stumbled back to his car. That night, Lisa finally decided to make her move. I was sitting in the living room, reviewing financial documents Rachel had sent over, when the door slammed open. Lisa stormed in, her face a mixture of rage and desperation. "Jason," she screamed. "What the hell are you doing?" I stayed seated, calm. "You'll have to be more specific, Lisa. What part of your life crumbling are you confused about?" Her eyes blazed. "You've been talking to lawyers, freezing accounts, ruining everything. How could you do this to me? How could I do this to you?" I repeated, my voice rising for the first time. "Are you serious right now? After everything you've done, you still have the nerve to act like the victim?" Lisa's fury wavered for a moment, replaced by a flicker of fear. "Jason, I made a mistake. A stupid, selfish mistake. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through it." I cut her off, standing now. "Stop. Just stop. This isn't about counseling or mistakes. You didn't slip up, Lisa. You made a choice. Repeatedly. You lied to my face, stole from me, and turned our marriage into a joke." Her face twisted with anger again. "You were never there for me. Always working, always distracted. What did you expect me to do?" "Anything but this," I said, my voice cold. But you couldn't even give me that. Now it's over, Lisa. The lawyers will sort out the rest. She stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief. You're really doing this? I already did, I said, handing her a copy of the separation papers. She left that night, but the battle was far from over. Over the next week, she and Chad tried everything: angry texts, tearful voicemails, even showing up unannounced. But I stood firm, documenting every move they made and feeding it to Rachel. The final blow came when I sent the recordings to our mutual friends and her family. Whatever sympathy Lisa had been trying to milk dried up fast once they heard her scheming in her own voice. By the end of the month, Lisa was out of the house, the accounts were locked down, and Chad was nowhere to be seen. I stood in the now empty living room, the silence heavy but freeing. This was the end of one chapter, and the start of something better. A week of uneasy silence passed after Lisa and Chad's retreat. I'd expected them to regroup, to lash out in some dramatic way, but nothing came. For a brief moment, I thought it might be over. Maybe Lisa had realized there was nothing left to salvage. Then the threats began. It started with a text. Lisa, you can't erase me, Jason. I'll make sure you pay for what you've done. Don't forget, I know things about you too. I stared at the message, shaking my head. Typical Lisa. When she couldn't manipulate me with tears or guilt, she'd resort to veiled threats. But I knew her game too well now. I responded with a single word: try. That night, as I reviewed more documents from Rachel, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photo, a picture of my car parked outside the gym. Lisa, you're predictable, Jason. You always go there at night. What if something happened to that nice SUV of yours? My stomach tightened. They were watching me. I immediately called the gym's front desk. The manager, a guy named Mike, confirmed my worst suspicion. Yeah, I just saw someone lurking near the parking lot. Looked like a guy, but he took off when I stepped outside. Thanks, Mike, I said, my tone clipped. Keep an eye out, will you? The next day, the SUV was fine, but the tension was suffocating. Everywhere I went, I felt like someone was watching me. Lisa's threats grew bolder, more unhinged. Lisa, Chad's right, you're just a coward hiding behind lawyers. Come face us if you're so tough. Lisa, you don't scare me, Jason. I know all about your little war hero act. Let's see what the court thinks when I tell them the truth about you. I laughed bitterly at that one. Truth? Lisa wouldn't know the truth if it slapped her in the face. That evening, I got a call from Rachel. Jason, we've got a problem, she said, her tone serious. Lisa filed a police report claiming you threatened her with a gun. She's trying to set you up. My blood ran cold. She what? She's accusing you of domestic violence, Rachel continued. It's a classic tactic. She's hoping to paint you as the aggressor so she can claim the upper hand in court. I clenched my fists, my mind racing. Can she make that stick? Not if we play our cards right, Rachel assured me. You have the recordings, the texts, the timeline, it's all on your side. But we need to act fast. If this goes to court, it'll get ugly. Ugly didn't even begin to cover it. 2 days later, a police officer knocked on my door. He handed me a restraining order, filed by Lisa, claiming I was a threat to her safety. She's claiming you threatened her with a gun at the cabin, the officer explained, his expression neutral. I don't know the details, but you'll need to comply with the order until this is sorted out in court. I bit back the urge to argue. Understood, I said, taking the paperwork. As soon as the officer left, I called Rachel. Relax, she said. This is a scare tactic. Stick to the facts, keep documenting everything, and don't engage with her directly. This will blow up in her face soon enough. But Lisa wasn't done. That night, as I sat in the living room, my phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from an unknown number. "You thought you could outsmart us, cuckold. There's nowhere to run. We'll finish you off soon, so accept your fate." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. This wasn't just Lisa now, Chad was involved too, and they were escalating. I replied immediately, "I'm not running anywhere, bastards. And guess who's in my crosshairs right now?" Then, I sent the message to Rachel with a note, "Proof they're harassing me." Her response was swift, "Perfect. Keep them talking." Every message is another nail in their coffin. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me reach for the pistol locked in my bedside drawer. I wasn't going to let these two clowns push me around, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video. The footage was shaky, taken from the back seat of a car. The camera panned to a familiar house, Rachel's. Chad's voice whispered from behind the camera. "Think your lawyer can save you now, Jason?" I bolted upright, dialing Rachel immediately. She answered groggily. "Jason? What's wrong?" "Check your cameras," I said, my voice urgent. "Chad's at your house. He sent me a video." She swore under her breath. "Give me a second." A tense silence followed as I heard her fumbling with her phone. "Got him," she said finally. "He's on the footage. I'm calling the cops." "Be careful," I warned her. "These two are desperate." The next day, I met Rachel at her office. She looked shaken but determined. "The cops caught him tailing me," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. "And guess what? He had a backpack full of tools, lockpicks, a crowbar, even a burner phone. He's facing charges now." I flipped through the photos of Chad's arrest, a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. "And Lisa?" I asked. Rachel smiled faintly. "She's in for a nasty surprise when we present this in court. Her little partner in crime just made our case a whole lot easier." As I drove home that evening, I allowed myself a rare moment of hope. For the first time in weeks, it felt like I was winning. Lisa and Chad's games were falling apart, their lies unraveling under the weight of their own arrogance. But deep down, I knew better than to let my guard down. People like them didn't give up without a fight. And I was ready for whatever came next. The courtroom was cold, its walls an unforgiving gray, matching the tension that hung in the air. Lisa sat at her table, her expression oscillating between smug confidence and flickers of panic. Chad wasn't there, he was still cooling off in a holding cell after his botched attempt to intimidate Rachel. Rachel leaned over and whispered, "They're cornered. She's desperate. Don't react to anything, Jason. Let the evidence speak." I nodded, my jaw tight. This was it, the culmination of weeks of deceit, threats, and manipulation. Lisa was out of moves, but I couldn't underestimate her. Not yet. The proceedings started with Rachel methodically presenting the evidence we'd gathered. The text messages, the video of Chad stalking Rachel's house, the timeline of Lisa's lies, it was all laid bare, piece by piece. Lisa's attorney tried to paint her as a victim, claiming she'd acted out of fear and confusion. They leaned heavily on the restraining order she'd filed, framing me as a volatile husband with a history of aggression. Then came the recordings. Rachel stood, holding up a USB drive like it was a trophy. "Your Honor, we have here several audio recordings that clearly demonstrate Mrs. Miller's intent to deceive, manipulate, and extort Mr. Miller. These recordings, along with text messages corroborating her statements, show that her restraining order was not only baseless but a deliberate ploy to gain leverage." Lisa's face paled as the recordings played for the court. Her voice filled the room, dripping with malice as she schemed with Chad. "Don't worry, Lisa's voice hissed from the speakers. We'll pin it all on Jason. He's too proud to fight dirty. We'll take him for everything. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look at her. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw her shoulders slump. When it was Lisa's turn to take the stand, she tried to summon her usual theatrics. Jason was always controlling, she began, her voice trembling in practiced fragility. I felt trapped, like I couldn't breathe. Chad was just an escape. A mistake, sure, but I was scared. Jason's military background made me feel like I was constantly under surveillance, like he could snap at any moment. I clenched my fists under the table but kept my face neutral. She was spinning her web of lies again, but the evidence was airtight. Rachel's cross-examination was brutal. You claim you were afraid of your husband, yet you repeatedly initiated contact with him after filing the restraining order. Can you explain that? Lisa fumbled for an answer. I just wanted closure. And what about the text messages where you and Mr. Carter, your alleged accomplice, threatened Mr. Miller and his lawyer? Was that closure too? Lisa's facade cracked. She stammered, unable to spin a convincing response. The judge's ruling came swiftly. Mrs. Miller, the evidence against you is overwhelming. Your restraining order is hereby dismissed, and I'm referring your case for investigation of perjury and filing false claims. As for the divorce proceedings, all assets will remain under Mr. Miller's control until further notice. A weight lifted off my chest as the gavel struck. It was over. Or so I thought. That night, as I returned to the house, a sense of unease settled over me. Victory in court hadn't stopped Lisa before, and I knew she still had cards left to play. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Nice win today, Jason. Too bad it won't matter when I'm done. The knot in my stomach tightened. I called Rachel immediately. She's planning something, I said. Let her try, Rachel replied. We've got the upper hand now. Whatever she does, she'll only dig herself deeper. I wanted to believe her, but something about the message felt different. At 2 a.m., my instincts were proven right. A loud crash jolted me awake. I grabbed my pistol from the bedside drawer and crept downstairs, my heart pounding. The living room window was shattered, glass glinting in the moonlight. Then I heard voices. Find him. Lisa's unmistakable voice hissed from outside. I crouched by the staircase, staying in the shadows. Lisa and Chad had brought reinforcements, 2 men I didn't recognize. They moved through the house, flashlights cutting through the dark. This is your last chance, Jason. Lisa shouted. You wanted a war? Well, here it is. Her voice was shrill, unhinged. I stayed low, slipping through the kitchen and out the back door. My military training kicked in as I moved silently around the house, positioning myself to see them without being seen. My phone buzzed. There's nowhere to run, cuckold. We'll finish you off soon, so accept your fate. I replied, my fingers steady, I'm not running anywhere, bastards. And guess who's in my crosshairs right now? I raised the rifle I'd retrieved from the garage, its scope trained on Chad, who was closest to the shattered window. The sound of my voice startled them as I stepped into view. Looking for me? I asked, my tone calm but ice cold. Lisa spun around, her flashlight trembling. Jason, put the gun down, she shrieked. Funny, I said, my aim steady. That's exactly what I was going to say to you. Chad took a step forward, but I fired a warning shot into the ground. Move again, and the next one isn't a warning, I growled. The 2 unfamiliar men bolted, their loyalty clearly not worth dying for. That left Chad and Lisa, frozen in place. You think this ends with you coming into my house? I said, my voice rising. You lost, Lisa. In court, in life, everywhere. You don't get to rewrite the rules just because you can't handle the consequences. Lisa's defiance melted into fear. Chad dropped his weapon, a crowbar, and raised his hands. "You're insane, man," he muttered. "Am I?" I asked. "Or am I just done playing nice?" I called the cops as Lisa and Chad sat on the ground, their hands zip-tied with cords I'd grabbed from the garage. By the time the police arrived, Lisa's tears were flowing freely, but they didn't sway anyone. "You're done," I told her as they hauled her into the squad car. "No more threats. No more games. It's over." She didn't reply, her head hanging low. As the sun rose the next morning, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the world wake up. The storm was finally over, and for the first time in months, I felt free. The house was quiet now, eerily so. The chaos of the past few weeks had been swept away like a storm that finally ran out of fury. But the silence wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, like the eye of a hurricane. I'd learned better than to assume Lisa and Chad were done. I sat at the dining table with a glass of whiskey, staring at the small black device in my hand, a burner phone Chad had dropped during the break-in. The cops had overlooked it, but I hadn't. Flipping it open, I scrolled through the texts. Most were mundane, plans to meet, snarky comments about me, but one message stood out. From Lisa, "Tonight's the night. When it's over, Jason will have nothing left. Burn it all." Burn it all? My pulse quickened. I called Rachel immediately. "Jason," she answered groggily. "Rachel, I think there's more to this," I said, my voice tight. Lisa and Chad, they weren't just after me personally. They were planning something bigger. Something destructive. Rachel sighed. "Jason, you're safe now. Chad's in custody, Lisa's facing charges. They've lost." I didn't reply. My gut told me otherwise. The next morning, my instincts were validated. I drove to my office downtown, determined to retrieve some documents for Rachel that might help finalize the divorce proceedings. When I got there, the scene stopped me cold. The building was surrounded by fire trucks, black smoke billowing into the sky. I jumped out of the car, my heart pounding. "What happened?" I asked a firefighter near the scene. "Arson," he said grimly. "Started in the upper levels, spread fast. It's lucky no one was inside. My office was on the 3rd floor. Everything, records, evidence, personal files, was gone." I clenched my fists. Lisa. That night, I sat in the darkened living room, waiting. If Lisa thought this was over, she was wrong. She'd already shown her cards: desperation, violence, and chaos. But I still had the upper hand. My phone buzzed. "Unknown number, hope you enjoyed the fireworks," cuckold. "We're not done yet." I stared at the message, the rage simmering inside me finally boiling over. "I'm not done either," I replied. Around midnight, a car pulled up outside my house. I watched through the blinds as Lisa stepped out, her silhouette illuminated by the streetlights. She was alone, but I doubted she'd come unarmed. She approached the door and knocked, her movements sharp and impatient. "Jason, open up," she yelled, her voice filled with venom. "We need to talk." I didn't move. Instead, I grabbed my phone and hit send on a pre-drafted text to the cops, alerting them of an intruder at my address. When she knocked again, harder this time, I opened the door just enough to see her face. "What do you want, Lisa?" I asked coldly. Her lips twisted into a bitter smile. "You think you've won, don't you?" she hissed. "You think this little court victory means anything? You ruined my life, Jason. Took everything from me. And you expect me to just walk away?" "No," I said evenly. "I expect you to dig your own grave." And you're doing a great job of it. Suddenly, she lunged forward, trying to force her way inside. I stepped back, grabbing the baton I'd placed by the door. Don't! I barked, raising the weapon. Her eyes burned with hatred. You're pathetic, she spat. You think hiding behind lawyers and cops makes you strong? You're nothing, Jason. Nothing. I didn't flinch. Then why are you so obsessed with me? Before she could answer, the sound of sirens pierced the night. Red and blue lights flashed against the walls as police cars screeched to a halt in front of the house. Lisa froze, her bravado evaporating. You called the cops, she whispered, her voice trembling. I smirked. Did you think I'd let you walk away from this? The officers cuffed Lisa as she screamed and thrashed, spouting every insult and curse she could muster. Chad had already been implicated in the arson, and now, with Lisa caught trespassing and threatening me, her fate was sealed. As they hauled her away, she turned to me one last time, her face twisted in rage. This isn't over, Jason, she screamed. I'll make you pay for this. I watched her disappear into the back of the squad car, a strange sense of calm washing over me. For the first time in months, I believed her threats were empty. She had no power left. The following weeks brought closure. The court awarded me full control of our assets, including the house and savings. Rachel ensured Lisa's antics were thoroughly documented, making her legal battles almost impossible to win. Chad was sentenced for his role in the break-in and arson, and Lisa faced charges of her own. But the victory wasn't about money or punishment. It was about reclaiming my life. One evening, as I sat on the back porch with a beer in hand, I reflected on everything that had happened. Lisa's betrayal, the chaos she'd unleashed, and the strength I'd found to stand against it, it had all shaped me in ways I never expected. I thought about the man I was before, the one who let his wife's lies chip away at him. That man was gone. In his place was someone stronger, someone who wouldn't tolerate deceit or manipulation ever again. If I'd learned one thing, it was this: you can't control what others do, but you can control how you respond. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's rising above. I took a long sip of my beer, the warmth of the setting sun on my face. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. And that was enough. The end.